Yeah, go. I think so. Go to YouTube and type in YDN Multimedia. Is it actually streaming? Yeah, I'm live streaming it. We yeah, we do.
Questions. You guys do have. Oh, you want a card? Yeah, absolutely. I like it. Let me. Someone, yeah.
Before we get started, I just wanted to say that Maxwell and Jackson from the Dems are walking around with cards. So if you haven't turned them in, or if you just don't want to write a last minute question, see them. But they're going to be circulating, trying to pick them up. So the second half of the debate is going to be all questions from the audience. So try to get to them as soon as possible because they're going to have to sift through them. Okay, so welcome to the Ward 1 Democratic primary debate. My name is Tyler Blackman, and I am the president of the Yale College Democrats. If you're unfamiliar with our organization, the Yale Dems is the official branch of the Democratic Party here on campus and the largest activist organization at Yale. We don't just debate or write about politics, we actually work to get things done. So if you want to check out the Dems, we meet every Monday at 7 p.m. In the Branford Common Room starting this Monday when New Haven's first ever elected Board of Education candidates will be joining us. So like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter to find out more, and we'll also be live tweeting this debate, so you can totally join in there as well. So some logistics I just have to get out of the way. As most of you know, Sarah Eidelson and Fish Stark are both seeking the Democratic nomination for the position of Ward 1 Alder. That primary will take place exactly a week from today, on Wednesday, September 16th. And you can vote in the basement of the New Haven Free Public Library over on Elm Street. In order to vote in the primary, you must be a registered Democrat living in Ward 1, which includes Old Campus, JE, Branford, Saybrook, Pearson, Davenport, Trumbull, Berkeley, Calhoun, and some off-campus housing. The deadline to register to vote is rapidly approaching, so don't leave here today unless you've registered to vote. And if you don't register today, you have until Friday to register either with us or with one of the campaigns. And as a very last resort, you can go in person yourself to City Hall by Tuesday at noon to register yourself. And again, there's really no reason why you shouldn't just go ahead and register today. And we have some voter reg forms outside, and some members of the Yale College Democrats t-shirts have them as well. It's worth noting here that the Yale College Democrats will not endorse anyone in this primary, but we're excited to gear up for whoever wins on Wednesday, and trust candidates will honor the results of that primary. But no matter who our nominee is, we're confident that they're going to win in November and make a great Alder for the next 2 years. Finally, the Dems have put together a primary ballot guide for all Democratic candidates in our area, and the address for that is tinyurl.com/DemsPrimaryGuide. So that has information about Ward 1, Ward 22, and the mayor and Board of Ed. Those are all races. Okay. So without further ado, let's get started with a round of applause for both of our candidates. Just about the rules of the debate. Each candidate will begin with a 3-minute opening statement. I will then ask 5 questions prepared from student organizations here on campus, and those will have 2-minute responses from each candidate. Following that, we'll move into 5 questions collected from the audience members on those cards. Again, those are 2-minute responses. And finally, we'll have 2-minute closing statements. At any point during the debate, say opening and closing statements, candidates are allowed to use 2 1-minute rebuttals, but only 2. I'll be rather strict about cutting you off if you ever go over time, so please respect the time limits and everyone's time here. We did not do a coin toss, but Sarah, will you choose a number between 1 and 2?
Am I supposed to tell you?
Yes. No, yeah, I have a number behind my
2.
Okay, it was 2. Do you want to go first or second?
I'll go first.
Okay. So it was decided by that improv 2 little game there that Sarah will go first, and then Fish will have the last word in closing statements. So let's go ahead and get started. Sarah, you can go ahead and begin now with your opening statement.
Thank you, Tyler and the Dems for creating the space for us to have this conversation, and all of you for taking the time to be here tonight. I think we'll end up spending a lot of time this evening talking about policy, so I want to take the opportunity to tell you a little bit about myself and how I've come to be here with you today. I think like most Yaleys, I was pretty nervous about coming to Yale. I was worried that it wouldn't be everything that I had dreamed it would be, and that I wouldn't find my people here. But once I got to campus, that changed really fast. I found a community of students who were fighting like hell to try to make Yale a more just place and to just be good citizens in a fundamental way in New Haven. And being a part of that movement on campus was really the way that I started to find my way at Yale and also to get more involved in the city overall. I think the biggest shift for me came the summer after my sophomore year when I decided to stay here for the summer, and through a Dwight Hall Fellowship I worked on the Community Voter Project. And that was an initiative that was just going door to door, talking with people in some of the highest crime and lowest voter turnout neighborhoods about voting and using your voting power as a way to build the overall power of your community. One day when we were out canvassing in the Dixwell neighborhood, there was a shooting, and there was an 11-year-old kid who was hit by a stray bullet. And he made it through, thankfully, but the community was just really grief-stricken, and as we were knocking on doors after that, the tenor of the conversation was very different. People were scared that it would happen again, and were scared that the next time it would be their kid. And when I came back to campus that night, none of my friends had heard that this had happened. And that was a moment for me where it felt very clear that as Yale students, each of us has a choice that we get to make about whether and how we're going to engage with this city in our time here. And I made my choice, I think, in that moment, and the next year was when I decided to step up and run for Alder, and I had never imagined that I might run for public office, but I'm so glad that I did, and I'm running for re-election because I think we have a lot more fighting left to do.
Tyler, I want to thank the Dems, I want to thank all the organizations that sent questions in, and I want to thank everyone for coming to this debate. I'm especially excited to see a lot of freshmen here who are interested in learning about the city they live in. You know, when I was a freshman, I spent a lot of my fall volunteering on a progressive campaign for mayor. I would canvass out in Fairhaven and Dwight and go to rallies out in Dixwell and Edgewood, and the community leaders I met on that campaign inspired me to make a deeper commitment to the city. And so I spent both the summer after my freshman year, the summer after my sophomore year, here working as a teacher. And as I built relationships with my students and their families, I felt my relationship to New Haven changing. I didn't feel as like an outsider, like an observer, but like a participant in the social change that we're working to build in this community. And then last year, I was the membership coordinator of the College Democrats. We worked to organize dozens of freshmen to canvass in neighborhoods like East Rock and Dwight to help re-elect our governor, Dan Malloy. I love this city, and that's part of why I'm not satisfied. I'm not satisfied with the fact that often we as students, and often this university as an institution, treats the New Haven community with indifference. And I'm not satisfied that when I'm out knocking on freshmen's doors, no one seems to know who our Alder is, that work doesn't seem to be being done to change that culture here at Yale. I'm running for Alder because this is a historic time in New Haven. People from every community are coming downtown to stand for community policing, to stand for better schools, to stand for living wages. We need Yale students to be out there with them, and we need an Alder who works to organize Yale students to be out there with them. We've received an incredible amount, unprecedented amount of support in this campaign, not just from Yale, but from the city at large. We filed our finance report today with more New Haven-based donations than I think any aldermanic campaign at Yale has had. People from the neighborhoods who have lived here their whole lives, who have led nonprofits, including Yale students. And we have a campaign that's supported by 6 other members of the Board of Alders. Alder Brackeen wrote an incredible op-ed supporting our campaign in the YDN today. 3 of the students who ran for the New Haven Public Schools School Board, Caroline and Delilah, are here tonight. Thank you guys for coming out. State Senator Gary Winfield, stood with us at our campaign rally last week. Not only that, but we've built incredible support at Yale. Every single board member of the College Democrats, 2/3 of the board members, all of those endorsing, are supporting us. The majority of our ward committee, the heads of the Yale NAACP and MECHA. And the reason they're doing that is because we know that the real power in this position isn't about being 1 voice out of 30. It's about the ability to mobilize 30 voices, like the people here in this room, to come out and stand in solidarity with New Haveners in support of the progressive change we want to see. I look forward to talking about how I can do that as your Ward 1 Alder.
We are now moving into the questions brought to us by student organizations. We have a lot of questions submitted. I've chosen 5 for this debate. So the first one comes from the party of the left. Police brutality and violence against people of color have been in the national spotlight recently. How do these issues affect New Haven, and how do you intend to address them? Sarah started last time, so we'll start with Fish.
Thanks. So I want to talk about public safety in New Haven as a whole, and then I want to talk about what we can do in terms of community policing and holding our police force accountable here. This past summer I was driving home from buying groceries at the Stop and Shop, and I saw police cars with their lights on outside of 730 George Street. And I knew that that was where one of my students at Squash Haven lived, and my heart sort of went up into my throat a little bit. Because, there is still, and in 2011 we had 34 homicides in this city. The city was in a crisis, and we brought in Chief Esserman and we reinstituted community policing, and by this year we've cut the number of homicides by 2/3. But there are still too many kids that constantly live under that cloud, and it's not okay. The way we change it, and the way we change also the problem of police brutality, is by building real relationships between neighbors and the police. That means having more officers out of their cars walking beats in New Haven's neighborhoods. That means expanding the officer in residence program that places officers in public housing, expanding de-escalation training for police officers, not just for rookies, but for veterans, and making sure that we're also differentiating between de-escalation with adults and de-escalation with youth, because those things are different. And we also need to have a strong civilian review board to hold our police accountable. We need a board modeled on the Malik proposal that was passed democratically by all of New Haven by a referendum in the 2000s that has the power to investigate, the power to recommend discipline. Unfortunately, the community that's working, or the committee that's working to create the civilian review board hasn't met for quite a long time. I would hope that we as Yale students could organize to help bring that needed change about, and also that we can make sure that the Yale Police Department is overseen by the new Civilian Review Board when it's created. Yeah.
I think that police brutality, as we all know and have been talking about, is an extremely urgent issue nationwide and in New Haven, and also, as we've seen this year, on our own campus. A lot of what Fish just said, I think, is true. We have been working as a board over the past 4 years in particular to bring back community-based policing because we need to have officers walking the beats and building those relationships. We've made a lot of progress, but there's still a ways to go. And Yale students played a major role when we were looking at revising our city charter, our constitution, in saying that we should put the Civilian Review Board into that document and give it some real lasting power. We're working now to figure out how we give that Civilian Review Board the sharpest teeth that we possibly can, and that's gonna require that it be able to actually investigate complaints in a way that it can't right now. But that's not gonna solve police brutality by itself. We're gonna have to go a lot further than that. Because the power to discipline police officers is still squarely with the Board of Police Commissioners. And the voters in 2013 took a major step for us to have more power there too, for the people to have a say in who sits on that board. I think that's a big step forward, and we're gonna have to exercise that power. And we're gonna have to go further than that and continue the work that we're doing to have body cameras be a part of our police protocol. We voted just last week to start a pilot program, and that's underway, but I think it's gonna take a lot of focus and a lot more community conversation to figure out how we take those steps and really shift the culture of policing in our community.
So the next question comes from the U.S. Grant Foundation. I've edited this slightly just for Lee. Many young people in New Haven have not had the kind of opportunities for educational enrichment and extracurricular activities that so many in this room had growing up. What can the Ward 1 Alder do to provide more opportunities for young people in the city? We'll start with Sarah.
This is an issue that's extremely close to my heart and has really been the focus of my leadership on the board. Starting from the thousands of conversations that I've gotten to have with you and with other residents of our ward, opportunities for young people are just one of the number one things that come up. And so when I got on the board, I said that I wanted to serve on the youth committee, and I have had the honor of chairing that committee over the past 4 years. In that time, we set out a legislative agenda, and in particular a youth agenda, that's focused on increasing the entire network of services and spaces that we have for young people. We've taken a lot of steps forward on that. We just last week got to tour the Farnham Neighborhood House, where they've just completed renovations to build their capacity as a result of funding that our committee fought for in the budget. We're doing that work at a number of other spaces. We're fighting to reopen the Dixwell Community House. Has been a missing part in that community for so many years, and we're on our way there. We also need to be strengthening our services for young people in addition to our spaces, and that's why we started a youth violence prevention grant initiative that has now put over $1 million into local programs and services. It's like I'm out of time, but hopefully we'll get to talk more
So this summer, I took the time to sit down with all the students who ran for the New Haven Board of Ed. Again, some of whom, Caroline and Delilah, are here today. They and Martin Clark have been out at Yale knocking doors for our campaign. And you know, they talked a lot about their experiences in New Haven public schools. Caroline in particular said something stirring to me, which is, I can only get sick on Thursday or Friday because that's when high school in the community has the nurse. And so we worked with them to craft a plan, a vision, that's focused on the things that New Haven youth really need in this city. A plan that goes beyond just websites and built spaces, but focuses on central promises to New Haven youth. And this plan was publicly endorsed by both democratically endorsed candidates for Board of Ed, Ed Joyner and Darnell Goldson. It centers around things like early childhood education, the fact that kids in the Hill and kids in East Rock have wildly different experiences from birth to 5 is a key driver of inequality in this city. We need 750 new free and reduced price preschool slots in this city, according to a Data Haven report. We need to fight for the state funding to get those slots. Restorative justice is another issue that's really important. We, in New Haven, we suspend and expel far too many students, especially students of color, feeding directly into the school-to-prison pipeline. And there are parent advocates who are working to correct this problem right now. One of them, Joanne Wilcox, as you'll see in our filing, just donated to our campaign. And we need to work with them on the Board of Alders to make sure that we're not just slapping a new label on the same old policies. And yes, we must rebuild the Q House. We need to support Mayor Harp's plan to keep schools open from 6 to 6. We need full-time school counselors and nurses in every school, and we need to expand the Boost program. You know, I go all over the city and I hear exciting things about the Escape Center that the youth department is putting up, and and Youth Stat that the youth department is doing, and Boost, which the New Haven Board of Education is running. I wish I heard those things about the youth committee, but as Alder said in his op-ed today, most of the work there over the past 4 years has been on designing a website. I think that we can go further.
The next question is one that I combined because two questions were similar from Students Unite Now and Yale College Council. Student activism on campus in recent years has targeted issues such as divestment from fossil fuels, support for the cultural centers, and the elimination of the student income contribution, among other things. Where do you stand on these issues? And if elected Alder, how will you work with student government and other organizations on Yale's campus that are also committed to improving students' experiences in our city? Sorry, and we'll start with this.
Awesome. That's a really important question. I want to first very quickly talk about where I stand on these issues, and then I want to talk about what I do to work to build that kind of student power on campus, how the Alder should work with these organizations. I'm absolutely in support of Yale divesting from fossil fuels, and in fact, I think the city of New Haven needs to divest from fossil fuels. It's something that's been done by similarly sized cities in New England. Not only would it be a good thing for New Haven, but it would put incredible pressure on the university to divest, and that's something that we've proposed from the very beginning. I absolutely think that we should eliminate the student contribution. It is entirely unfair. It creates inherently separate Yale experiences for people on financial aid and people not on financial aid. We need to do away with it. And we also absolutely need to increase support, staffing support, facilities support, programmatic support to the cultural houses. Those things are non-negotiable. The Alder should stand with those communities, and the Alder should stand with those communities year-round, not just when they're running for re-election. You know, I think that the Alder can be doing a lot more to connect with students here in the community. I want to tell a brief story. In the fall of 2014, the YDN did a survey of over 24 freshmen. They asked them if they could name their Alder. Only one of them could, and Varun could name his Alder because I had coffee with him for an hour and invited him to a meeting of the Yale College Democrats. We invited both Alders to represent, who represented campus to come, but I think Alder Morrison, you were the only one there. I think we need an Alder that does more to build relationships with student organizations, especially groups like the YCC and the Greek Council and student athletes that aren't as involved in New Haven. And we need to work to build relationships with progressive groups. The Ward Committee only met once last semester. That should be a place where the College Dems and BSA and MECHA and SUN and FFY are all coming together to say, how can we stand in solidarity with people in the community? That's how I want to see our Alder engaging with student groups and standing in solidarity with them on the policy changes that matter.
when I first got to campus, sort of what I was telling you before, and was trying to figure out how to fit in here, the people who I first got to know were a group of students who were fighting around financial aid. And it's a campaign that's been going on for a very long time. We have won a lot through it, but I feel very strongly that the student contribution should be completely eliminated. It is, I think, just a tool that creates a greater class divide at Yale where one already exists, and means that students from lower income backgrounds have to work to pay for their education or to support their families back home, while students who are lucky enough to come from privilege don't have to do that. I think that Yale absolutely should divest from fossil fuels, and I think that the activism that has happened around fossil-free, especially this spring, was incredibly powerful, and I was so moved to get to be there and be a part of things when a group of incredibly brave students, many of whom are here tonight, decided that they were going to exercise their right to protest and sit in and say, no, we're not going to leave because we are the constituents of this university and our voice actually matters. We have a right to say what we want to say. And I think that by not adequately supporting the cultural centers, our university makes very clear where its priorities are, and I think that that's shameful and needs to change. All of these issues I think we need to be fighting for, and I have been and will continue to be fighting with you. I think, I'm out of time, but...
Yeah, thank you. The next question is from Democracy United. Would you support legislation enabling the New Haven Democracy Fund to provide public campaign financing to candidates for any of City Clerk, Board of Education, or Board of Alders? And Sarah, we'll start with you.
Yeah. I am absolutely a supporter of campaign finance reform. I think that the projection that 75% of all of the money that goes into the presidential race is going to come from fewer than 100 people is appalling. And locally, I think the Democracy Fund is extremely important. I have supported the Democracy Fund in my time. We voted to allocate additional funds to it so that it can grow. And in terms of expanding it, I think that that would be great. I think that as with most budget decisions, we have to do a thorough assessment and look at the priorities. So for me, the question of how many offices we expand it to would come down to the analysis of how much it'll cost and comparing that and whether or not we can afford it with the other initiatives that I think need to be our priorities, like the programs that we've been talking about tonight, like reopening the Q House, like funding our youth violence prevention programs. I think, we need to be responsible in assessing how we balance all of those things, but if we can do it, I think it would be great.
So I really love the fact that New Haven is a city of 130,000 people and that we have 30 alders, each representing a district of 4,000 people. And to me, the great thing about that is it means that the people on the board are not professional politicians. They're working people representing their neighbors. They're people who care about concerns in their community, that have built relationships with their neighborhood, and are now going out to fight for the things that their neighbors want to see. But the fact is, the Democracy Fund did a study a little while ago that showed that the average aldermanic campaign in New Haven costs around $3,000, $3,500, the average successful aldermanic campaign. And for most working New Haveners, that is a barrier to entry. That is enough to keep someone from being able to run to office. Most working New Haveners don't have $3,000, $3,500 running around. And so the reason I think it's important to expand the Democracy Fund to the Board of Alders, to the City Clerk, to the School Board, and the reason that I proposed this formally as part of our platform is so that we give those New Haveners access and we make sure that our neighborhoods are represented. Sarah's right that we absolutely do need to take into account the effect that this is going to have on our budget and consider, what are our other spending priorities. But at the end of the day, representation is worth it. And if we have folks from neighborhoods who are out there representing the priorities of their neighborhoods, we're going to see more spending on the things that matter, not less.
Next question, and this is the last of the organizational questions, then we'll move into questions from the audience. The last question is from the Yale Daily News. For both candidates, should Ward 1 exist in its current form? And why give Yaleys, transient residents of the city, their own representative?
That's a tough question and one we've been engaging with a lot here at Yale and a lot in New Haven. Strangely, Yaleys are actually more likely to say Ward 1 should be eliminated than people I've talked to in New Haven. Believe it or not, we're a little self-effacing. So here's what I think. Ward 1 is a unique ward. If you're acting like just one of the other 30 alders, you're not doing your job. The power of the Ward 1 alder is in engaging students to get out there, to stand in solidarity with the community, getting them off the sidelines, out of the ivory tower, onto the picket lines, into the neighborhoods to help move this progressive change forward. I mean, as you can see here in this room tonight, we have an incredibly engaged community on a lot of issues, but it has been disengaged on city issues. And, I'm down there at City Hall and I see people from all neighborhoods coming to the fight for the things that matter to them. I don't see Yale students there as often as they should be, considering that we're so engaged and passionate about these issues and that it's a block from where we live. For the Ward 1 alder to be effective, for this position to do what it was designed to do, for it to be worth it, to have a student on the New Haven Board of Alders, we need someone who is committed and who is going to do the work to engage students in the city, to engage them on the political issues. There is one thing I think, and that's that I don't think it's appropriate for the Ward 1 alder to serve on leadership in the Board of Alders. Those positions are for New Haveners, representing New Haven neighborhoods, and we don't need and we don't want a more powerful voice on the Board of Alders. We need and we want an alder that works to bring students out into the community to build support and power for the voices of New Haveners. And that vision for this position is why there is a groundswell of community support from the city. That's why you see those other alders. That's why you see State Senator Winfield. That's why you see those neighborhood leaders out there standing with us in support of this campaign, because we are going to use this position for what it was meant to do and engage this constituency to stand in solidarity with the community.
I see things a little bit differently from Fish on this one. I am a New Haven resident, and I have been for 7 years. I came here to go to Yale at 17, and now at the age of 24, I am still here because as a student, and I think that Ward 1 absolutely should exist, and there are definitely ways in which our ward is special and different, but each ward in this city is different from the others. I think because the reality in our ward is that Yale provides a lot of the traditional constituent services that my colleagues on the board have to fight for their constituents. And we're lucky in Ward 1 that to get our basic services, to get our trees trimmed and our streets paved, we don't have to fight that much because Yale does that. But Ward 1 is right at the heart of the city, and I have felt that I have had, as the Ward 1 alder, a choice to make about whether it was going to be an island in the center of the city, or whether I was going to take my colleagues on on the board seriously and really partner with them to try to be a leader in fighting for the city that will be better for all of us, for students and all residents. And I was incredibly honored this spring that my colleagues elected me unanimously to join the board leadership, and I'm committed to
You're absolutely right, Sarah, that it's important that Ward 1 not be an island, but the fact is, right now, we are an island. Students are disconnected from the city. Yale University isn't doing what it should for the city, and the Ward 1 Alder needs to be someone who is actively organizing on campus to change that relationship, for students to be out responsibly engaging with the community, to build student power, to press the university to do what is right for the city. And when the most recent YDM survey, actually after you had announced your re-election campaign, shows that only 4 of 37 students can identify their Alder, that's just wrong. That's making us into more it is not a choice between engaging in City Hall and engaging at Yale. That is an entirely false dichotomy. Past Ward 1 Alders and every Alder in this city have a responsibility and have a tradition both of getting good work done at City Hall and being present in their neighborhoods and organizing their neighbors for the change. That's not a choice. It's not an option. We can't do one or the other. We need to have both.
Move into the audience question period. So again, these will be 5 questions, and again, the candidates will have 2 minutes to respond. Fish still has 1 rebuttal, Sarah still has 2, so keep that in mind as well. Okay, so, and we'll start with Sarah, because Fish used the rebuttal. So given the presence of a Republican candidate in this race, do each of you pledge right now to support the winner of the primary after Wednesday?
Yes.
I'm starting with Sarah.
I think that we're in a tough spot in this election. We have developed our own method in Ward 1 because in some ways we are unusual, where for the past several elections we have the election in November, and that way students are given a shot to actually learn what's going on, learn that they live in New Haven, get registered to vote, and start to figure out what they care about here. So I have always thought that this election should just be in November because I think that that is the way that we actually enfranchise the maximum number of students. I have been out every day knocking on doors, talking to people, and especially talking to freshmen who have not heard, of course, of the Board of Alders because they just got here. And I think that to force them to try to figure everything out in 2 weeks while they're also shopping and figuring out their classes and their life here is unreasonable and disrespectful to them. So I'm engaging in the primary because clearly there was the will from some Democrats on campus to have a primary, but I really believe this should be a general election.
So here's the thing. We have made incredible progress in this city in the past 4 years, and that's because we've had a Board of Alders that has come together, that has set an agenda, that is all 30 of them committed to working together on the same agenda, and because we have that cohesion, we've been able to see incredible strides. We need to elect someone in this ward who will work with that majority, who will work with that progress and not stand against it. That means we need to have a Democrat, we need to have a progressive in the seat. That is non-negotiable. And that was the reason I committed to respecting the result of the Democratic primary, because I don't want to see a general election scenario where we split the vote of Democrats on campus and we allow a Republican to come into this office. I think I'm the best candidate for Ward 1 Alder. But if I don't win the primary election, I will absolutely drop out and support you, Sarah. I believe that more important than my desire to be Alder is the need to have a progressive serving on this board. And Sarah, it's concerning to me that you can't make the same commitment. Now, I understand that you're concerned about people having enough information to vote, and I am too, obviously. But then what I would say is, where have you been for the past 4 years? It's great that you've been out, before, for 2 weeks before the election, knocking on doors and talking to people. But the fact is, multiple YDN surveys say no one knows who their Alder is. When I was on the board of the Yale College Democrats, we rarely heard from you, even when we reached out. And if we were the one who was out there on Bulldog Days talking to freshmen and leading them on walking tours in the city. We're the ones who have been having conversations about New Haven issues in this campaign since March. And we're the ones who have laid out a plan for how the Ward 1 Alder can year-round be working to engage students on these issues. If we want people to be informed, then informing them has to be a full-time job of the Ward 1 Alder.
New Haven has made vital steps to improve its relationship to its large immigrant community, such as with the issuing of city ID cards. Yet there is still work to be done. As Ward 1 Alder, how would you strengthen New Haven's commitment to the immigrant community? And we'll start with Fish.
I am really proud to be in a city that some people might call a sanctuary city. A city that has taken steps to be a safe place for immigrants regardless of their documented status. And I'm really thrilled by the work that Mayor DeStefano did when he was in office to work with the police to make sure that no immigrant in the city has to live in fear. That's something that makes New Haven special to me. That's something that I think is important. When he issued the Elm City ID and said, we are going to recognize every citizen in the city, and we are going to make sure that you can use this to open a bank account so you don't have to worry about being mugged on the streets, that's important. I think we can expand the use of the Elm City ID to make it a card that all residents will be able to easily use. Maybe we could make it double as a bus pass or a library card, something so that it can be a unifying thing for all residents and so that there wouldn't be a stigma attached to it. I also think that we can't talk about issues affecting undocumented workers in the city without talking about the issue of wage theft. It's something that occurs too much in the city, occurs too close to campus. We need to crack down on employers that commit wage theft in the city. One measure that's been passed by Boston and San Francisco that I would champion is an ordinance that revokes and gets rid of the permits for businesses that commit wage theft until wages are paid back in full. So if you run a bar and you're convicted of wage theft, your city-issued liquor license gets taken away. And that's just one thing that would help stem the tide. But we also need to work to make sure that Yale students are not shopping at businesses that commit wage theft, that they're aware of these issues, that they are out there standing on the picket lines with workers, and the Ward 1 Alder needs to be out there standing on the picket lines with them. And we're really proud to have earned the support of Maria Melchior, the president of METCHA at Yale, in this race. And I think that's because folks know that I'm going to fight for these issues and make sure that we have Yaleys standing out there with the immigrant community, standing alongside them and fighting for these issues as well.
I agree actually with Fish. I think that wage theft is an urgent issue in our city and in cities across Connecticut, and that we need to be punishing employers who are stealing from their employees to the fullest extent of the law, both to get the money back in people's pockets that they have earned, and also that we should be pressing criminal charges and making an example of employers who aren't doing right by their employees. We need to do that as a city. I think we also, as individuals, need to be out there protesting and making that example the way that we did, I think, with Gourmet Heaven. I also know that we are in a real crisis in New Haven, and in particular, we're in a jobs crisis. In our communities of color right now, 1 in 5 people is unemployed. And that is horrifying, and we need to make the shift. We have been fighting on the Board of Alders to connect residents to good jobs because the jobs are here. There are 83,000 jobs in the city, but they're not going to the people who live here. And when you look at the jobs that are actually good jobs that you could support a family on, 2% of those jobs are going to people in communities of need, in communities of color in New Haven. And we, on the Board of Alders, we've established New Haven Works, which is our initiative to actually push large employers to commit to hire residents, not just to make symbolic gestures or do training programs, but to actually hold them accountable. I think we need to continue doing that.
So you brought that up, Sarah. I'm going to have a little chance to expand on that. So the next question is, as Alder, what would you do to address the jobs crisis facing New Haven? So maybe you could use the 2 minutes to expand a little bit more. So starting with you, Sarah.
Can do. So 4 years ago, when I first got onto the board, we sat down basically as a group of people coming from 30 different neighborhoods with different constituencies, and we had an open brainstorm about what the issues were facing each of our neighborhoods, where we were trying to figure out how we could work together, actually to do something bigger than what any of us could do on our own. And jobs were top of the list for most neighborhoods in the city, almost every neighborhood really. We are in this crisis because our unemployment rate is too high overall, but in particular in neighborhoods of color. It's just a real crisis. And so our work has been to create New Haven Works to actually bring employers and folks from the community and government and training programs and labor all together around one table, figuring out how we end up in a win-win situation, how we have employers saying, these are the types of jobs that are coming down the pike that we know we're going to need to hire people for. Let's create the training so that New Haven residents can get qualified and then actually get those jobs. And through that, we've been able to press employers to commit to hire people who come through that program and are qualified. So far, New Haven Works has placed over 650 people. Vast majority people of color and a large percentage folks in the reentry population. As Alder, I'm going to continue fighting like hell to get people into those jobs, to get support for New Haven Works to continue and grow, because we have a lot more people who need jobs still.
Sarah's absolutely right. There is an unemployment crisis in this city. You know, the recent Data Haven report showed that job growth in the city was going up and job growth in the suburbs is going down. We are seeing an unprecedented level of investment in this city. We're on the verge of an economic renaissance, but now we need to make sure that all New Haveners share in that prosperity, because that increase in jobs isn't leading to increases in jobs in Dixwell, in New Hallville, in Fairhaven, the communities that need them. And there are a couple things that we can do to work on that. The first is we absolutely need to support pipelines like New Haven Works. We need to support job training and placement for New Haveners. We also need to support programs like Youth at Work that make sure that students are getting trained and getting the skills they need to be able to take jobs once they graduate. As Alder, I would organize students. I would organize the College Dems when they go up to do lobbying in Hartford to fight for more state resources to come back to Youth at Work. I also think that we need to push strongly for community benefits agreements with new employers, developers that are moving into this city, to get them to commit to local hiring, when they're building a building, or Lexion Pharmaceuticals is moving hundreds of new workers into this city. How can we make sure that they're hiring locally? One of the things in this hiring discussion that often goes unsaid is the role of Yale. Yale New Haven Hospital are one of the largest employers in the city, and if there's going to be a solution to this crisis, then they need to play a central role. Now, Yale committed this summer to hiring 500 more New Haveners, but that's not enough. We can do better. And what the Ward 1 Alder needs to be doing is showing up on campus and building student power across the entire progressive community so that we can go out there and we can advocate for our university to be a responsible community member, that we make the commitments we should be making to providing more living wage local jobs here at this university. I'm going to issue that challenge if I'm elected Alder.
You have a 1 minute rebuttal.
Fish is right that Yale's commitment to hire 500 more New Haven residents is not enough. It's not enough because it's not anything at all. Yale hires hundreds of New Haven residents, and they need to do more than that. They need to step it up. They need to hire them from neighborhoods of need in this city.
Yes.
But they also need to put more money into the city. We are in a revenue crisis right now, and folks may have seen the New York Times op-ed that said that Yale, the amount of money that Yale pays its private equity fund managers could fund the entire budget of the city of New Haven for a year. Just to pay those people. So we need to take that press more seriously.
Okay, so next question. How do you view your role in the context of Yale's involvement in the gentrification of New Haven, particularly now as Yale grows farther out into the city? We'll start with Fish.
All right. Well, first I want to talk about responsible development in general, and then I want to talk specifically about responsible development on Broadway and Chapel. I think we need to be pushing to promote a city that is accessible. I was talking with one of my friends, her name is Christy, she's a teacher who lives in East Rock, and she was saying to me, I grew up in New Haven, and I consider myself middle class, and I don't feel like there are places downtown where I can shop. And so we need to be pushing to make sure that as we're seeing this new wave of investment in this city, that we're making it a regional hub for retail, but that we're also making sure that folks from every neighborhood have affordable places. And nowhere is this playing out more visibly than on Broadway and Chapel. And we have been hearing discussions on campus all of last year at the dining halls, in the YDN op-ed pages, about the development that is happening there. Now, what the Ward 1 Alder should be doing is working to bring together Yale students and New Haveners to have a discussion to create a forward-looking vision for that space. I think that we would want to see a more diverse retail mix, stores that are affordable for all Yaleys and all New Haveners. We want to see locally owned stores, and we especially want to see stores that hire from New Haven works, that pay living wages, and that ban the box. And as Ward 1 Alder, I'd organize people to do that. Now, unfortunately, this June, and this was something that I found concerning, Sarah, you wrote a letter to the Board of Planning and Zoning in support of the 6 new storefronts that Yale wants to build in the parking lot next to Tycho Copy and the grad student dorms above them, without so much as an email to students or to the people in Ward 1 that you represent. I didn't think that was appropriate. And as Ward 1 Alder, I would have used this position to engage Yale students, to engage New Haveners together on discussion of the things we want to see in that neighborhood. And I would have worked to create a forward-looking vision and gone to Yale and said, we want to see a more affordable retail mix, we want to see local hiring, we want to see living wages, we want you to commit to practices of responsibility.
So last of the questions from the audience.
Wait, what about me?
Oh, I'm sorry. The only mess up so far.
That's okay, you're doing great. So I also think that responsible development is incredibly important. I serve as the Board of Alders representative on our Economic Development Commission for the city. And in that role, I have worked to promote development that is inclusive of the community that it's trying to serve, that brings good jobs into this city, that's environmentally responsible. And I have taken the opportunities as projects come to us to get input from the community on what we want to see. So when the project that Tish is referring to came up, I was actually extremely concerned that I heard about it from Yale, and I went and I spoke with the students who live right next to where that development is going to happen, and they told me that they hadn't heard anything about it from the administration. And I went back to the administration and said, you need to include students in this process. And you need to do this development in a way that's going to benefit our community. We don't want to see more parking lots in this city. People want to have activity. We want our neighborhood to be vibrant. And so I think when we get opportunities like that, we should fill in those spaces, but we should do it in a way that reflects the community's needs. And so it was only after Yale agreed and went and did outreach to the students there and had meetings with them about what they thought about the project, about making sure that there would be good light and air coming in, that the project wouldn't block their view out of the back of Davenport. There were a lot of details, but it was only after all of that was settled that I said, okay, I'm going to support this project because people have been engaged and it's going to bring a positive thing to our neighborhood.
To the last question of the audience. What is the most salient policy difference between you and your opponent? We'll start with that.
Salient. I think that what we're each bringing is a pretty substantial difference of approach. I ran to represent you all after years here in New Haven as a student and as a New Haven resident, figuring out what was important to me and what was important to my fellow students, and then what was going on around us and how we could interface with that. For me, my time on the board has been about bringing our voices, bringing youth voices from Ward 1 and bringing youth voices from around the city to the table. And figuring out how we as Yale students are not ignoring the rest of the city and also are not talking down to people from other neighborhoods. But figuring out how we actually partner with our neighbors and fight together for the city that we want to live in overall. And that work is slow and tedious to build the kinds of deep relationships that it takes to get things done actually on the board, because it takes 16 votes to get something passed, but it takes a lot more consensus than that to actually tackle the scale of crisis that we're looking at right now. And it is that experience and that relationship building approach that has enabled me to be effective as your Alder.
Cole Aronson, was that you? Was that your question?
It was.
All right, so I'm going to say straight out, I don't think there's any kind of substantive policy difference between the two of us. I think that that's pretty true. Of course, feel free to disagree, but I think that's probably where we stand. The difference is, what are you going to do to get the things you want to get done passed? What are you going to do to engage your community and make sure that they're participating? And we've laid out a plan not for how we want to engage Yale students, because it's not enough to say that Yale students aren't engaged. We want to talk about how to do that. And so we've laid out a plan for how the Ward 1 Alder should be engaging with individual students, knocking on freshmen's doors, and talking to folks, having either a column in the YDN or regularly communicating on social media, building relationships with groups, having regular meetings of the Ward 1 committee and using it as a place to unite our progressive community and having them stand in solidarity with the city, not just communicating with 1 or 2 student groups. And of course building those relationships with Dwight Hall, that's critical, and with groups that aren't normally as engaged, and putting pressure on the university to build those sustainable bridges that get students involved in the New Haven community, as Sarah was alluding to, in ways that are not just service for service's sake, but are grounded in real dialogue and real understanding and real partnership, and aren't just Yale students, waltzing in saying, I took one urban studies class and now I know how to fix Lincoln Bassett, but Yale students saying, how can I work with you? How can I give support to the work you are doing? How can I use my talents and skills to lift up your voice? Because there are nonprofits in the city where 2 people are doing the work of 10 people. We need an Alder that works to get Yale students out doing that work, not an Alder that is out of touch and out of sight. And that's where you're going to see policy differences between us, because I'm going to do that organizing to get students out to the Board of Alders, supporting the progressive policies, standing with the community for the progressive future we want to see.
So that was the last of our audience questions, so we're going to move into closing statements. So these are 2-minute closing statements, and we will start with Sarah, and so there's kind of left.
Well, I want to start by thanking you all again for taking the time to be here and to participate in this conversation. I want to respond a little bit to what Fish is saying, because I'm hearing the criticism, and no one can argue that I haven't put in the time or the legwork in this role. But I think the criticism is about where I've spent my time. I'll say, I think given the scale of the challenges that we're facing, I have had to be really thoughtful about how I balance the work to fight for the changes we're trying to see downtown with engaging Yale students at every step of the way in that process. But I'm proud of the way that I've struck that balance. We have had a number of opportunities over the last couple of years where students have stepped up and led in the city, and Charter Revision was just one of them. We have student reps on our Board of Education now, in large part because Yale students said that was going to be a priority for us. And you came out and testified, and we drafted that legislation, and we got it passed, and we implemented that this spring. And now Coral and Kimberly are sitting at the Board of Ed meetings representing their peers, and that is the kind of work that we need, where students aren't just talking about what's happening, but actually are doing the work.
Yeah.
There's a lot more that needs to happen. There's a lot of fight left to go, and it's really been an honor to be fighting and advocating for you, and I am running for re-election because I want to keep fighting.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. We're at a historic moment in this city. And there is a community-based movement of people from every neighborhood that is coming downtown and rallying to make this a more just city, a more progressive city, a city where everyone has a chance to earn a living wage, where no one lives in fear of their neighbors or of the police, a city where every kid in every neighborhood, not just East Rock or Westville or Prospect Hill, is born with the opportunity to succeed. and I see residents from all neighborhoods coming downtown, I want to see Yale students standing with them too. I want to see them standing with them in larger numbers, and I want to be an Alder that works to start a precedent of Ward 1 Alders showing up on campus and getting students involved in that work. That's why, again, we have built this unprecedented level of community support. Half of the students who ran for those seats on the Board of Ed are out here supporting us, knocking on doors. 6 other Alders, our state senator, and folks from around the neighborhoods here in New Haven are coming out here to support us, as are the majority of the ward committee. We were one of the only ward committees to endorse, where the majority of the members endorsed a challenger over the incumbent. Every single board member, 2/3 of the board of this organization, the College Democrats, has endorsed us. The presidents of Yale NAACP, the president of MECHA, the leader of student groups from all across this community, because they want to see a Ward 1 Alder that is always showing up and doing the work. And if we can do that, if we can build that student power, we can see a student body that is aware and informed and engaged and involved. We can see a university that treats the community around it with justice. And we can see a New Haven that is prosperous, where that prosperity is shared by all people in all neighborhoods. That's why we've earned that support. That's what I'm out here today fighting for. That's why I'm asking for your vote on primary day next Wednesday, September 16th. Thank you.
So this concludes the Ward 1 Democratic primary debate. I just want to take a moment of personal privilege and say I'm friends with both of these candidates, and I think either one of them would make a great Alder. So thank you so much to the candidates and for the audience for their participation in this event. Register to vote if you haven't. Voting is from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Wednesday, September 16th at the library. And just as another plug for the Dems, we're meeting next Monday at the Bradford Common Room at 7 to hear from the Board of Education. Thank you so much.